Most of the song I wasn't that impressed with, but the solo was so good. I'm like, okay, this is going to keep me coming back.
Hello and welcome to Dastardly Hamster. Last time we listened to some suicidal tendencies, and you mentioned that you liked the very clean, clear sound of the guitar in one of the songs. So today I decided that we are going to be listening to some more clean, clear guitar sounds and
Okay.
introducing you to some Pantera.
Interesting. I've never heard Pantera before, so I have no idea what to expect. It
I
sounds like it might be a metal band.
It might be. I can almost guarantee that at some point during the first song, you're going to go, I'm pretty sure that I've heard this before. We are going to be listening first to Cemetery Gates. Interesting note about Pantera, they started in the 80s, and when they started, were very much a hair band because that is what was in at the time. In the late 80s and into the early 90s, they started to leave while they didn't necessarily cut their hair, they did leave a little bit of the hairband aesthetic behind and started to go more into this sort of grunge movement that was coming up and became what I would have called grunge metal. I don't know if that's the official name for it. At the time, it was fairly new and revolutionary, although these days you'd probably call it fairly classic, but they are the ones who made it classic.
Right. That's the hard part about going through old songs is trying to explain to people like this was different when it first came out. It's kind of like the Seinfeld effect. And now a lot of people watch Seinfeld and they think, this isn't funny, but it's like, well, they created a lot of the stuff that's used today in comedy. So that was interesting. I thought the intro was going one direction and it sort of changed.
I think that's something that does very much define metal is that feeling of surprise and constantly trying to keep you guessing.
Okay, not what I was expecting at all. Really hard intro. I'm thinking, okay, we're going into this 100 miles an hour. And then we start very soft, clean vocals, slow it down a bit, which is fine. Just not what I expected.
I would say that this is probably one of Pantera's, we'll say, softer songs. Without a tear in his eyes, nothing new for him to see. I didn't ask him why. I will remember the love my souls has sworn to me. Now I watch the falling rain. All my mind can see now is yours. Well, I guess you took my youth and gave it all away. Like the birth of a newfound joy, this love would end in rage. And when she died, I couldn't cry. The pride within my soul. You left me incomplete, all alone as the memories left.
We stepped it up a little. Vocals got harder. Little bit of grunge in the voice there. I expected that it would do that, but glad to see that it came to fruition. The instantly recognizable metal scream for me is the one he did right before I paused it there. The pitch goes up.
So you're talking about that operatic where he went, like
Yes,
that?
yes.
Well, it's funny you would say that because for me, it's actually the opposite. Because when I think of metal, I think of much more guttural sounds. What he did, I would actually not call a scream. I would call like an operatic singing.
Scream was the
So
wrong word. The reason I said scream was just because I was trying to explain him using a vocal sound that wasn't part of the lyrics.
no, it actually is it's a word.
Wait,
He's
is it?
singing.
Wait, let me go
Yes.
back. Okay. Okay, never mind. It was part of the lyrics. I thought he was just
No,
randomly going like, oh.
when he goes operatic, it's more in the range of 80s metal,
Right.
which is where you can see their original influence, where they came from. And the rest of the music with a very, very heavy sound and the hard with the instruments is more them going into that 90s metal that they eventually progressed to. So this is a really interesting mix or fusion of those two extremities that they went from one to the other.
He sounded like the Iron Maiden singer.
Yes, exactly. So Pantera started out as hair metal and progressed into really their own sound, which was a precursor to a lot of the metal that came later, which is what I would generally call metal, which is the guttural sounds. And this is so 80s metal, right?
Yeah, for sure.
And the guitar?
Yeah.
And now we're more into the 90s.
It's always the last vocal of the chorus where he does that thing, that operatic, whatever you called it.
Really impressive that he can do that. And that's one thing that I do appreciate about a lot of metal singers, especially from around this era, is they could sing.
Yeah, he's got some range here.
So you hear that Gates. So that is what metal becomes. But then what we're about to go into is this clean, crisp guitar that is so 80s. And one thing that I did find interesting that I actually hadn't noticed before is the singer, he does these movements like this, right?
I don't
and
see
like this, which is very classical music and very operatic, right? Opera singers will do this with their arms.
Okay, I just want to comment on that solo. Amazing transition there. It started slow, and I'm thinking, okay, I like this, a nice, slow, and comfortable solo. And then
No.
all of a sudden, the backing guitars start changing. They start speeding up. And then the main solo guitar just starts speeding up as well. And now they're both going in tandem. And I thought that transition was done really well. There are some songs that there's a certain component to the song that will keep me listening to it. So even if I am not huge on the rest of the song, looking forward to the part that I know is coming will help me get through the parts that I'm not as big on. And that
Hmm.
actually that helps me a lot to like the song as a whole, right? Because it's very rare I'll like an entire song front to back, but if there's something in it where I'm like, okay, this is really cool and that's going to lead me through this song, I can start to enjoy the rest of it too if it flows into that, right? I can like
Hmm.
see it as a larger picture. Right now, most of the song I wasn't that impressed with, but the solo was so good. I'm like, okay, this is going to keep me coming back. And now with
Hmm.
repeat listens, I might like the rest of the song more. Okay, ending was a little long, I think. I think it overstayed its welcome a bit. You know me. Anytime I see 4 or 5 minute song, I'm like, okay, it better justify it. And I thought the solo justified it a lot. Like the solo was pretty long, and I think it needed to be a long solo. I think it was the most powerful part of the song. I did enjoy how it was able to show such a range with this in this song. So you saw like the very slow parts, and that transitioned into like a little bit more harder singing, harder guitar. So I did enjoy that. I would say most of it didn't stand out to me that much. I would just say it sounded generic, but not like bad. Listenable, good, but didn't stand out to me too much. Except for the solo, which I loved. For that reason, I'm going to give this I'm debating between 3 or 4. You know what? I'm going to give this 3 out of 4 ham stars
Okay.
just because of how long it is. I think it's the type of song that I'll enjoy it more the more I listen to. But for right now, for a first listen, I'm going to play it safe. I'm just going to give it a 3.
In my case, I consider this to be one of the best songs ever written. 5 out of 5 ham stars easily. It is the song that, if I was talking to someone classical and I was trying to explain to them why metal is good and why try to explain the parallels between current guttural metal and hair metal, how all of it really descends from classical music. This is the song that I would show them to say, like, do you hear the classical in this? Yes, it does sound standard now because everybody copied them.
Right, for sure. Yeah, that's why I said I was really on the fence about 3 or 4. I think the more I listen to this, I probably would eventually move it up to a 4.
I'm going to give you a warning. It's quite rare for a metal song to be less than like 4 or 5 minutes.
Right, which is
Most of
fine.
them.
There's a punk rock song that's 18 minutes long. It's probably one of my favorite songs of all time. If a song can justify it, and by justify it, I mean like it's different enough throughout the song that I feel it needs the extra time. Cool. What I'd be really interested in seeing is how long is the guitar solo in comparison to the rest of the song. I'd be really interested in figuring that out. And if it turns out that like the actual song outside of the guitar solo isn't that long, if it was mostly the solo that was taking up that space, I would be more okay with it. However, I don't think that was the case. I think we got an outro that was too long. And I think the intro was too long too.
The intro I can get on board with. The outro, for me, I think it's the right length, but the thing that he was doing where he was like singing back to his guitar, that's something that I generally associate with Led Zeppelin. At least a generation earlier than this, Led Zeppelin dragged it out a lot more. So to me, it actually feels pretty brief.
Hold on though. Weren't you telling me the other day that you can't stand fade outs?
Yeah, there are some times where I think it was okay. This is a song that's called Cemetery Gates. I think it has a meaning. There's a message behind it fading out. I didn't mind it as much. And also the very, very last note is the guitar going and it fades out. There's a little bit of a punch right at the end, right? And it does also, the guitar fades out on its own. So I do think that goes into the message of mortality. Well, that's it for us, Hamstars. Spin your wheels down to that subscribe button.
And give us a dastardly thumbs up.